I love Persona 5 Royal. But before we start the video, I quickly want to share my experience, or also lack of experience, with Persona games. Time for a flashback. It was August 13th, and a little leaflet was scrolling Steam when he saw something catch his eye. Wow, that Persona 5 game is on special. That's actually pretty cool. Pretty wacky story, right? Anyway, after over 100 hours, I have finally completed my first playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, and the game is truly deserving of all the praise it receives. But why is that? What makes this game so freaking good? Well, imaginary person, I am so glad you asked, because for the next however many minutes, I will be deep diving into each and every aspect of the game, and talking about what I loved about the game, what I liked about the game, and yes, even what I disliked about the game. Because there were definitely things I didn't really like. So anyway, make sure you got some Phantom Wafers ready, make sure your proficiency is maxed out, and let's get into the first category, which is... Wait, I know what you're thinking, okay? Oh, this is just gonna be one of those YouTube videos that claims it's a game review, but then really is just like a 2-hour story summary with like 5 minutes of dissecting crammed in at the very end of the video, but I promise you it's not. Please stay, don't go, please don't go, please don't! The way I'm laying out this part of the video is I'm going to briefly summarize the plot of each palace, and then talk about my thoughts for each one, like, you know, what surprised me, what entertained me. You get it, you're smart enough to know what's happening. Yep, sound good? Awesome sauce. Also, story spoilers. Duh. Super fast, let's cover the prologue. Your player character, codenamed Joker, is in the process of robbing a casino with his crew, the Phantom Thieves. Joker distracts the enemies, allowing his team to escape, and seemingly, Joker is also going to escape, before he is ambushed by a large police force, apparently being sold out by someone on his team. The regular stuff happens next, you know, he's beaten up, drugged up to hell and back, and is questioned by an extremely attractive lady. God, she's attractive. Attractive lady then asks Joker to retell the story from his side, which he agrees to. The story is just balls to the wall straight away. It's a really cool, like, sort of introduction tutorial level. But this whole side Nijima shit where you keep flashing back to her for her to say some stuff, it's just annoying. I'm never like, wow, I can't believe we're flashing back to her. It's just annoying, and it happens for so long. And yes, it does have some really cool story payoffs that are like, wow, this is really cool. But I just think these little moments just aren't worth the, like, whole flashback thing every few minutes. It's just really annoying in my opinion. Also, having Joker just, like, immediately lose in the opening, like, scene doesn't fill me as the player with much hope with his abilities. But yeah, pretty decent opening, I would say. Okay, Palace 1, Suguru Kamoshida. Joker saw a woman in distress, struggling against a man. Being the white knight he is, he comes in to save her, bitch slapping the man so hard he bleeds. The loser, very mad, flips the script on Joker. Turns out this guy is pretty important, and in the end, Joker ends up with a criminal record. To get away from this, he is put under probation in a new town, where he lives in the attic of an old hippie who's getting some ka-ching out of the situation. On Joker's first day of school, he keeps getting a weird app on his phone, but just like I did with my Grindr profile, he deletes that shit immediately. Anyway, Joker meets two people on the way, Aunt Takamaki, who gets in the car of a really friendly looking bloke, and also Ryuji Sakamoto, your new bestest buddy. While Joker and bestest buddy are walking to school, Grindr somehow finds its way back on your phone, and all of a sudden you're in the freaky castle, run by the freaky king himself, the friendly bloke, Suguru Kamoshida. Ryuji almost dies, Joker almost dies, he says "nuh-uh", awakens his persona, and him and Ryuji escape together. They also found this weird cat dude named Morgana. Along the way, a few things happen. Ryuji awakens to his persona, Ann awakens to her persona, a girl throws herself off a building, Morgana explains the inner workings of the castle, a girl throws herself off the building, the Freaky King shows off his freaky servants, a girl throws herself off the building? What the what the fuck? I thought this game was gonna be a silly, goofy adventure. I gotta say, I knew pretty little going into Persona 5 Royale. I really only knew that A, the game is incredibly stylistic, and B, you can rizz up minors, and those are like two of my favorite things ever. Let's go! So to say I was caught off guard by the direction the game was taken would be like massive understatement. This first arc covers sexual harassment, abuse, blackmail, self-harm, more. And I gotta say, I love the tone the game sets up immediately. It really makes you hate Kamoshida. Seeing how he views the people of his palace as either slaves or sex objects is just really infuriating. And even watching his reaction to when the girl throws herself off the building, that was, by the way, entirely his fault, is downright disgusting. And it really just makes you want to beat the absolute living hell out of him. This palace, and most of the others, follows a pretty similar pattern. Being the group is introduced to a new character, introduce the palace ruler, defeat ruler, celebrate, find next ruler, repeat. Each of these arcs takes roughly about 10 hours each, and I want to mention this now because this first palace acts as a 10-hour tutorial. But shockingly, I loved every minute of it. This game has so many different mechanics, so having this super long tutorial is like almost required, to be honest. Now, I'm not just going to sit here and just list everything the game teaches you, but if you're thinking about playing Persona 5 Royale or want a friend to try it, get them to play through this first palace. Because if you don't like the game here, there's just no way you're going to like the rest of the game. But thankfully, I loved it. Anyway, so the gang here finds a route to the treasure and send out
the calling card,
which is when the super friendly Freaky King sees it. It makes his freaky treasure become a reality, allowing the fellas to swoop in and steal it, right? Well, sorta. Joker does get his grubby little mitts on the freaky treasure, but the Freaky King ain't freaking having it, and gets really freaking mad and freaks out. The Phantom Thieves beat him though, steal his treasure, save the day, and all go out for pancakes. Game over, GG easy, team diff. Well, it would be, but a strangely familiar guy pisses off Joker and his best buddy, encouraging the gang to continue on. The end of this first palace introduces the premise of boss fights for the game. These being extremely difficult encounters, normally featuring a mechanic or a puzzle that the player has to interact with, and it's done so well. It's been a few weeks now since I've, well, actually beat the game, but I can tell you off the top of my head every single boss fight in the game and what mechanic they needed the player to indulge in to actually beat the fight. It makes these fights extremely more satisfying to beat. Well, except for a few. I'll get to you soon, Akumura, just you wait. I'll also talk about this later, but I want to say that both the 2D animated cutscenes and the pre-rendered 3D cutscenes are both just amazing. They're so fun to watch, and I would audibly giggle with joy whenever I saw the screen cut to black and then it would come back with an anime clip to watch. This game at times just feels like an anime, with massive 3 to 4 hour chunks of just dialogue or navigating towns, with no actual combat. But never once was I bored during these times, as I always had something to do or look forward to. I also love how strong of a starting cast they chose to go with. Each character feels so independent from each other, but also have charming dialogue with one another. They bounce off of each other so well, and like, these moments between characters honestly becomes one of my favorite bits of P5R. And I will talk about this in depth later. But concluding this first palace, I thought it was incredibly good. Set my standards very high for the rest of the games, but I can definitely see why some people bounce off it. There's like a lot to learn here, and also the Sainijima flashbacks really break the flow of the game. Now, Palace 2, Ichiryu Madarame. By the way, I thought it would be funnier if I retold the story without like refreshing myself at all, so if anything sounds wrong, it's probably because it is. The group, on their way to Denny's, feels a disturbing presence following them. Ann, like a Discord moderator to e-girls, lures out the stalker, and Joker and best buddy come in and tell the dude she's got a boyfriend. Yusuke Kitagawa, the stalker, says it's just been a misunderstanding, and simply wants to paint Ann completely naked in a room with just the two of them. Shockingly, this works, but Joker and Ryuji want to watch, so everyone goes back to Yusuke's pad to see it go down. Later, Yusuke throws a hissy fit, and a fight begins to break out between the thieves and the stalker, until Yusuke's teacher, the super kind and incredibly humble Madarame, breaks it up and sends us all away. The gang, after this experience, immediately decide he's completely evil and abusing Yusuke, and enter his palace, the Gazillion Dollar Museum. This next story beat already feels like such a natural progression for the story to take. I probably didn't explain it well, but Yusuke is introduced to the story so seamlessly, and seeing him grapple with having to accept that Madarame isn't who he thought he was is so interesting. Because in the last palace, we knew from the start that both Ryuji and An just hated Kamoshida's guts. But Madarame, he was like a parental figure to Yusuke, taking him in when no one else would. Also, having Madarame take a facade of like a kinda old man gives an interesting dynamic for the cast to struggle with, as even when they discover he has an actual palace and is stealing artists' work, he still gave these artists a chance to make these works. So is it really up to us as the Phantom Thieves to change his ways? Like, he is abusive and he is manipulating, but he's still giving these people a chance to make art. Before Yusuke decides to join the team, the group found themselves at a roadblock in the museum. Morgana, being the intellectual cat, dude that he is, says the only way to move forward is to make the real Madarame open it, whatever that means. So An heads over to Stalker's place, checks the attic for kids, and ta-da! Door in palace is now open. After this, Yusuke sees what's popping in his master's palace, and seeing what the gang have been saying is actually true, he awakens to his persona and joins the Phantom Thieves. The band of best friends, and Morgana, eventually secure a route to the treasure, steal it, and take down Madarame, who quickly mentions something about a fella who wears a black mask, but that probably won't be important. I'm going to talk about this a bit more in depth later, but I want to quickly mention now how much I love Yusuke, and not just Yusuke, but pretty much the entire cast of characters P5R offers. Yusuke and all the ladder members offers such a nice contrast to the already introduced characters, and I absolutely adore some of the little rivalries and bickering that the characters establish with each other, especially Yusuke and Futaba. I laughed out loud so many times at some of the interactions. Moving on, while I thought the boss fight with Madarame was pretty fun and had a cool mechanic to teach to the player, the actual palace itself definitely wasn't one of the strongest. The painting puzzle was quite cool, but that was only one room, and the only other mechanic was having to jump over laser wires, which wasn't exactly very hard or interactive, but to be honest, I don't really think that's too big of a deal, seeing it's only the second palace. I don't really have anything else to say about this arc, as it's sort of short and uneventful in the grand scheme of things, other than, Yusuke joining and the little mention of the Black Mask. But still, a very solid second arc that keeps the pace the story has set so far. Palace 3, Junior Kaneshiro. After taking down the super kind and humble artist, the merry band of thieves have started to actually make a name for themselves, and are starting to be looked into. But what the police and professional detectives couldn't do, a goody two-shoes third year could. Enter Makoto, an honor roll sweat that does the bidding for any adult no matter what. She's easily able to find out our identities by taking a leaf out of Yusuke's book and stalks us. Best buddy Ryuji, riding the high of 2 back-to-back achievements, pretty much parades around exclaiming, "Hey, look at us, we're the Phantom Thieves!" Makoko Puffs, after finally finding some evidence, instantly starts to blackmail us, the same way she's been by adults for however long. We decide to go along with her plan, but not before the entire gang pretty much tells us she's a bitch, she's useless, and also to commit self-die. Trying to beat these allegations thrown against her, she instantly picks a fight with Yakuza members, and drags the team into a drug pen with a mafia boss that is able to extort them. Real useful, Makoko. I gotta say, during this whole first interaction when Makoto was introduced, I fucking despised her, and I actually sort of love it. All of Makoto's interactions with Joker and friends isn't actually her. It's just her deflecting the attitude and the cruelty that the adults in her life have treated her with. So yes, while it's definitely annoying and definitely put some bad blood between the gang and her with all the shenanigans she pulled, I think it really helps establish that these adults are truly corrupt and will start poisoning the youth if they're allowed to continue. So yes, Makoto was super annoying. That's because it wasn't her that we were seeing. This palace was one all the way up in the tippity-toppity of the sky, and the guys couldn't reach it. But thanks to Makoko Loco, a very welcoming bridge was extended down for them to get up with. Inside, they meet Purple Guy from FNAF. but fat. And him being the absolute giga chad he is, jumps on the Makoto hate train and pretty much tells her to KYS as well. This causes the poor girl to, understandably, crash the fuck out in one of, if not the coldest Persona awakenings in the game. Also, she has a flipping bike? How fucking cool is that? Anyway, Purple Guy skedaddles away to the deepest part of his palace to Scrooge McDuck himself with all his money, and the gang, with their new biker member, follow suit. I flippin' love everything about this scene. Makoto's awakening is so badass, but the thing I love more is the name she's given. The others so far have only really been given names based on like the type of masks they're wearing. But the name Queen is more so what Makoto has decided who she is. She's going to be in control of her own life now rather than just being controlled by adults. Also, I'm going to mention here that the character and costume designs in P5R are just nothing short of amazing. Like, not only are their palace clothes badass, especially Joker and Queen, their outfits they wear in the real world are so drippy, and they all fit so well with each of their personalities. Like, Makoto wearing formal business clothes, or Ann wearing easy-to-wear stylish clothes. Even Ryuji, whose outfits are almost always an assault on the eyes, feel like something he would definitely wear. Fast forward some time, the thieving phantoms make their way to the bottom floor of the DMV, but before we can secure the route to the treasure, we have to do math. Oh my god, why is it math? Why math? After spending no time at all in the math, we secure the route and go to steal the treasure, but then Purple Guy pulls out his secret weapon, the pig from Toy Story. This chunky boy do be rollin' though, but the team eventually convince him to invest in Dogecoin, and suddenly his money, aka his power, all just disappears. Before we escape though, he also mentions something about a dude in a black mask, which is incredibly coincidental, because Murata Rame mentioned the same thing before. How strange. Again, this palace feels like a nice step forward after the last two. We take down a bigger name, the palace is noticeably bigger and harder, and we get a new team member. About the palace, while I did enjoy the math puzzles, the other mechanic was incredibly strange to me. So you were able to pay a decent sum of money and you would open a door that would let you like avoid enemies. However, this game just gives money to you like it's candy. So it's not like it was hard to afford, but also, this might just be how I play games, but I'm always going to take the way that has the most enemies so I can get more XP. So while I always unlocked the door just because I always had enough money to do it, I never actually went that way because I want to get as strong as I can, so I'm not just going to skip enemies and make the boss fight harder on myself because of that. It's also important for me to mention that at the start of this palace was the time where I decided to swap the difficulty from normal to hard, as the game, apart from the boss fights, just wasn't very challenging so far, and I'm not one to like super challenging games, but like I want to be decently challenged and not feel like I'm playing the game on autopilot, so that's why I changed it to hard mode. But all in all, a very, very good palace that has an incredible theme, an awesome design, progresses the story well, and again, introduces an amazing addition to the team, which is really all we want out of these palaces, and it just achieves that perfectly. Palace 4, Futaba Sakura. After another win for the awesome team and Morgana, a mysterious group of people named Medjet get very angry with us for seemingly no reason. So they release a tweet longer announcing they're going to cancel the Phantom Thieves unless they come forward. Joker and gang, shockingly, doesn't have a clue what to do about this, but coincidentally, as this drama is going down, a being named Ali Banana messages Joker, telling them to steal someone's heart and they will help. We know nothing about this character, but through the help of everyone except Ryuji, we discover Ali Banana is actually the adopted daughter of Sojiro, the man whose cafe Joker is crashing in. We go to confront Ali Banana, and like a scene from a fucking horror movie, Ali Baba jump scares the ever-living Christ out of Makoko. Afterwards though, Sojiro basically trauma dumps Ali Baba's story, aka Futaba Sakura's story, and we enter her palace, a desert tomb. The setup for this palace is just so good. It's really refreshing that our next target is not just some big bad guy again, but is both a force that we can't actually really stop, as well as our next party member. The way Futaba is introduced to us is so hilarious. I love the scene so much where she appears behind Makoto and Joker. I love it so much. I pretty much love everything about Futaba. She's fun, she's quirky, she's deep, and her palace theme is banging. I feel that if this arc was just another bad guy's heart we had to change, the formula would have started to grow a little bit old. So it really was refreshing for it to be changed up at this specific point in particular. It's also a little thing, but I love that Futaba's palace is so distant from the rest of the world, which really starts to hone in that shut-in lifestyle she's adopted. Futaba has balls in her. Palace. As our merry band of adventurers are making their way through the tomb, they uncover little puzzles that give information about our resident gamer girl's trauma, and like the little detectives we all are, except Ryuji, we learned that gamer girl, Gigi for short, was pretty much blamed for her mum's death by everyone, and it's taken some pretty sad effects on poor Gigi's mental health. Can we get an F in the chat for Gigi, guys? Anyway, the gang find themselves at the end of the dungeon, and instead of fighting Gigi's shadow, they fight an arranged version of her mother. Joker and crew are struggling hard though, but luckily, Gigi's phone randomly upgrades her Reddit app to premium, and it lets her join the gang in the palace, where she awakens to her persona and helps defeat her trauma. This is definitely my favorite palace so far. Visually, it's awesome. We get to go both inside the palace and to a small sand village nearby, and the enemy shadow designs in these areas rule. I really like the give and take gimmick this palace has as well. It's pretty similar to the gimmick we saw in the last palace, but it's just done well this time. So there's this crystal you can carry with you that helps unlock treasure in later on areas. However, while you're carrying this crystal, more enemies spawn, so you have to decide if you want these more enemy spawns and the treasure, or you want neither of these things at all. Also, Futaba's backstory is just super depressing, so it feels so good to watch her able to overcome her trauma. She doesn't even have to have her heart stolen from the gang or anything, so her maturing feels like it's something she's actually earned, rather than it's just given to her by stealing her heart. Also, all the anime cutscenes in this arc are just such a treat, super duper fun and enjoying to watch. So yes, another amazing palace that ticks all the boxes for what it needs to do. However, as much as I love this part of the game though, things start taking a very heavy decline in quality, just seemingly out of nowhere. And this starts with the boss of this palace. Now, I don't know if my fight was broken or something, but a fight against Futaba's mom took me like 50 minutes or something outrageous like that. There was this phase in the fight where she had really high damage reduction, and I think the game was meant to give me an opportunity to use the ballista to shoot her down, but it just didn't do that, so I just had to keep spamming healing items to try and stay alive, and just eventually whittled her down for her resistances. After successfully saving Gigi, aka Gamer Girl, aka Ali Banana, she's able to take quick care of Medjed. With this problem finally behind them, Ann, Best Buddy, and Joker are all off on an excursion to Hawaii, baby! This is gonna be so cool, the OG free, together on a beach, drinking coconuts and doing a limbo. Oh, this is gonna be so cool! Yusuke's here. So's Makoko. And pretty much every other confidant that's not the stupid cat. Dude, Morgana. Well, okay, that just means we get to do shenanigans all together. That's gonna end... Yeah, nothing happened. We're back home already. Yeah, this section is just so incredibly weak. There's not even anything for me to really recap, because nothing actually happens. The only thing worthwhile is the group sort of start talking about their next potential target, but man, this whole section is just so much wasted potential. Like, they're in Hawaii, there's so much cool stuff they could have done here. We could have got them, like, a cool 2D animation of them playing hula or limbo on the beach together, or them, like, all sneaking out at night to, like, explore Hawaii or something. I don't know, just anything substantial here would have worked. It's also so weak that, like, 80% of the confidants we know are just here in Hawaii as well. Like, why are Yusuke and Makoto? It's just the whole thing just doesn't feel very special or eventful. And yes, I think this was sort of done on purpose, but I just can't come up with any reason where this is actually good enough to warrant this boring part of the game than just rather having them do something cool here. This whole thing's also incredibly boring from a gameplay perspective. Instead of just giving you no freedom at all and just playing this event out, the game decides to put you in this really claustrophobic little box maps that you have to like run up and down and just talk to people you don't care about really, and like nothing happens like at all. And yeah, I haven't really been talking about these post-Palace events because most of them aren't super interesting to talk about in a video, but none of them have been bad like so far. Like, they've all been super enjoyable and fun to watch, and they've been a really nice reward for the gang to like go out and do something fun after they complete a palace. but this one just is such a huge blip in quality. But that being said, having one of these post-Palace events like be on the weaker side definitely wouldn't have been that big of a problem in like the whole grand scheme of the game, but it just pains me to say that this dip in quality continues. Palace 5, Kunakazu Okumura. After the group's largely uneventful outing in Hawaii, they return to the rest of the members to discuss their next target. However, for the first time, an unanimous decision can't be reached about whether they should change the CEO of Okumura Foods' heart. Morgana, being a mature cat, that he is, instantly boards up at the entire team and storms off in a hissy fit. Of course, understandably, the group gets instantly angry at Ryuji for this all happening and demand they find Morgana so he can apologize. Yep. Anyway, eventually Joker and crew track down Moaning Mona in Okumura's palace, but not before finding his new accomplice, a girl whose name is just as forgettable as she is. I'm only half joking here. Basically, a lot of hijinks ensue, lots of Scooby-Doo chases, but eventually we all hug it out and everyone is happy again. We even got a new teammate out of it, Habu. With this, the team settle on taking down the Colonel himself, who was actually Habu's dad. Eventually, when the gang reach the end of the dungeon, we're about to confront Okumura, but not before he traps everyone except Moni and Habu. And, seeing as this is Habu's introduction, and this is literally her dad, we get a nice scene of Morgana talking out his feelings and beliefs. Yep, very cool. Also, the Black Mask dude just straight up kills Okumura anyway, but forget about that, it's time for Disneyland, yippee! Yeah, just not a big fan of anything happening in this palace, to be honest. Like, not to say that anything here has been, like, straight up unplayable or anything, but with how high quality the rest of P5R has been, it just makes this section, along with Hawaii, like, just stick out like a sore thumb. Now, I want to preface, Morgana getting angry with the Phantom Thieves and his own inabilities is a perfectly reasonable plot point for him to go through. However, the way it was handled was so incredibly poor. Especially when some of the blame for his anger is just directed at Ryuji. Like, all Morgana does is just talk shit about Ryuji. Yet when Ryuji does it back, Morgana just leaves and everyone gets mad at Ryuji instead. I feel the plot point would have moved a lot more smoothly if it was like something along the lines of Morgana's feelings getting built up, then they all enter Okumura's palace together. He doesn't know how to open the locked door and he tells the crew he's sorry, he's so useless, and he like runs off. And then later he finds Haru, you know, getting abused by the partner that her dad set up with him, and then Morgana comes in to try and save her, showing that he still has a pure heart, that he has pure intention still, and that even if he's doubting his abilities, he still wants to save people. Maybe I'm tripping? I don't know, maybe that's just what I'm thinking. Also, for being Haru's literal introduction to the team, she really gets pretty much no screen time. She's just sort of there, and she really just stays in that role for the rest of the game, with all her content just being put in her confidant. So if you didn't do her confidant like me, she really just is that nothing character. Also, I think she gets over the death of her father, which, by the way, was possibly due to her own actions, way too fast. Like, she pretty much distances herself from the gang for, like, a few days, and then she comes back like nothing happened. Like, maybe you can say this is because her father died years ago, when he prioritized the business over her well-being, but I don't know. Also, I can't talk about Okumura Palace without talking about the boss fight, because good god is this difficulty spike insane. If you're like me and haven't ranked up your baton pass ranks on everyone, or didn't have good elemental synergies, this boss fight is such a pain in the ass. Now, I would be less critical about this difficult fight, because I like difficult fights, but the rest of the game just doesn't even come close to matching this difficulty. Not a single boss afterwards like came close to the struggle that I faced during this fight. He's just, yeah. So anyways, all in all, this whole chunk of the game is easily the weakest story-wise, character-wise, and even gameplay-wise, to be honest. But luckily, this bad streak does not continue. Palace 6, Sai Nijima. Outsmarted again, Joker, best buddy Ryuji, Moni the cat, dude, An, Stalker, Mokoko, Gigi, and Habu agree to a last-ditch effort plan to try and make contact with the famous detective Akechi Goro. Now, unknown to the rest of the group, Joker and Sketchy have secretly been dating for months, so he gives the numbers to Mokoko, who sets up a trap at their school to try and pry some information from him. However, since Sketchy is, well, incredibly more smarter than the rest of the group, which isn't that hard, they have like 2 smart members. He calls an emergency meeting and claims that the group are sus, and therefore are the Phantom Thieves. However, Sketchy gives a proposal. He also is a super rad Persona user, and claims that him and the gang are going to take down Sainijima, save the world, and then go out for some delicious pancakes. The group reluctantly accept the offer and leave, but not before Morgana tells us something. We don't know what this is though, because we stand up way too quickly and our low iron level causes us to get a little bit dizzy. Anyways, afterwards the gang, Sketchy and Toe, meet up and enter Sai's palace, and oh my god, it's a casino, baby! Man, I heckin' love gambling! Gamba, best arc in the game, what? Once the peeps enter the casino, Dummy Mummy Sai immediately meets with them, saying in order to make it to a treasure, they're gonna have to take part in her palace's activities. Man, she's hot, and she's forcing me to gamble? Why isn't she romanceable again? What's the reason for that? Anyways, after a lot of gambling and getting stuck trying to find a green control panel for way too long, we make it to the bridge with enough money, but Dummy Mummy increases the amount last second. Sadly, before we can go back and gamble more, Sketchy reveals he was doing, well, sketchy things, and manages to come up with the rest of the money. So after fighting Dummy Mummy and revealing her cheating antics, we go to escape with the treasure and... Wait a minute, it's the beginning of the game! Oh my god, we've caught up, finally! You know what that means though, no more flashbacks, thank god. We're so back, baby. It's like night and day between this arc and the last one. The quality goes right back up to its standard, and I'm just so glad the story just didn't gradually lose steam after the fucking whole Akumura antics, man. The payoff for the flashback storyline being the reveal of sending Sai a coin card was so worth it, even if I did see it coming. It made those janky flashbacks almost worth it in the end. Almost. Also, Sai's palace might be my favorite one artistically. The casino is so fun and vibrant, and it's really fun to explore and see the different economy levels, and the theme, god, the theme is so good. The boss fight was also pretty good as well, but it definitely had the weakest mechanic slash gimmick out of them all, which was none, really. Only having to solve how she was actually cheating, and then you just beat her up like any other tough enemy. Moving on to Akechi though, he is such an interesting character to add to the group. The group are clearly welcoming of him because they're like kind people, but they're still very distant. You can tell there is definitely something off about Akechi, but it's so hard to deny his usefulness to the team in both his brains and brawn. Nor do the group really have a choice about working with him, so they're just making the best of this shitty situation they're in. Also, finally catching up with the intro of the game and replaying the tutorial section again, it was so cool. It was really cool. I don't know what about it makes it so satisfying, but finally getting back to the present after roughly like 60 hours of gameplay is just cool. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. It's cool. It made me smile. Alright, quick fire for this next chunk of story, because it's massive and a little confusing. So confusing that they made GG offer to give you an in-depth breakdown of everything that happened while you're playing the game. So if you want to know exactly what happens, just go listen to her. Joker is captured, being sold out by his teammate, probably Morgana, stupid little cat. Dude. Joker goes into custody, questioned by the real Dummy Mummy Sai. Sai, suddenly becoming more receptive to Joker's story, almost as if she's had a change of heart, questions what Joker wants, and he asks her to show the trader his phone. She leaves, and shock, Sketchy comes in to kill Joker, and succeeds, and then goes out to eat those delicious pancakes he wanted so badly. However, Sai does show Sketchy the phone, putting him in a fake world and killed an imposter. Therefore, real Joker, while thought to be now dead, escapes hard cleared and with zero sus. The group reunite and now have stronger bonds than ever. This whole story section goes for like more than 2 hours, and I know I'm saying this a lot, but I loved it. I loved it so much. While the Akechi twist wasn't the craziest like plot twist in the world, seeing his real personality come through was like straight up terrifying. Also, while I knew the odds of them actually killing off Joker, the main character, was like pretty low, the game definitely had me almost thinking they were gonna do it. But man, that moment where everyone is reacting to Joker's death and it zooms into Ryuji and says, "We got him." Oh, chills man, literal chills. I will say, even though I don't mind these big chunks of dialogue, a lot of this dialogue in particular was pretty heavy thinking stuff. But at least Atlus sort of realized this, and they put a lot of the explanation stuff in some optional dialogue with Futaba, which is definitely worth watching by the way. But now, with those flashbacks finally done, we can get to the biggest and baddest villain for the team to face. Palace 7, Masayoshi Shido. This is it. The Dream Team, having successfully done a sneaky on the world, start their plan to take down their biggest baddie yet, which is... Well, they sort of don't know who they actually need to go after yet. They just know they need to go after them. A solid plan, yes. However, they are rudely interrupted by Johnny Sins doing a live broadcast show just down the road. Best buddy Ryuji, absolutely losing his shit, instantly runs out to go see Johnny Sins, and reluctantly Joker and Hamu join him. When they get there, Joker is about to have another one of his episodes, but luckily he took his iron supplement tablets this time and is able to successfully have a memory, and realizes that this isn't Johnny Sins, but is actually the man who originally gave him that criminal record. Surprise Pikachu face. After trouble dumping to his friends, adoptive father, and also Morgana, it's a unanimous decision to take this guy down, once and for all. We board a ship and Palace 7 begins. Super cool setup for this final boss after such a long story section just prior. I like seeing the gang together, all filled with determination to finish strong with one of their most evil villains yet. Having multiple connections to each of the individual Phantom Thieves, like being in contact with the Shujin school principal, being involved with the death of Futaba's mom, the stuff with Joker obviously, and even having a link with Akechi, you know, being his dad and all. Alright, this palace is super long, so I'm going to quickly and briefly cover the main points. So the gang needs 5 Smash Bros invitations to proceed, but each one of them is locked behind a super evil dude. For the first one, Bakoko keeps glazing this super important dude, like she's doing tricks on it and shit, until he eventually gives over the letter. For the second one, the girls all get into swimsuits. Yes, this is extremely important. And An asks the dude for a bottle of water, and he gives the letter over. Next up, Hamu does... honestly, I can't remember what she does, but it doesn't work, and they fight it out, and she gets the letter. For the fourth one, Futaba sneaks into the room of the evil dude and tries showing him her full platinum trophy for Crash Bandicoot 4, but he's just not impressed, so they fight for the letter. Finally, the last dude, Kiryu-chan, simply wants a picture of a bird, and then he gives us the letter. Also, between all of that, rats. Lots and lots and lots of rats. Also, Sketchy dies. No, my boy! He only killed a bunch of people, he deserved better. No. Anyway, after a few tears, the gang regroups and takes on Johnny Shido, whose boss fight takes a few different forms.
Big lion with wings, Pyramid, JoJo's character.
I want to reiterate again how much I enjoy each boss fight, with them all feeling so different from each other, due to them all focusing on certain mechanics the player has to learn. Shido, in this case, to my knowledge, was the first boss to buff all of their stats at once, so if you didn't have a shit ton of stat clearing items from Mummy to Kemi, you might have been a wee bit screwed, especially during that last stand bit where he singles out Joker. That part took me, like, no joke, 30 minutes of spamming healing items and getting a hit in every now and then. Which is one little thing I'm not that big of a fan of. Being when you die on hard difficulty, so like some of these bosses take a pretty long time, so when you do die, there goes like 30 minutes of your time that you have to redo all again, just to get to the same bit again. Again, not that big of a problem, since the game isn't that hard anyway, but something worth mentioning. Also, I can't talk about this palace without talking about the infamous rat puzzles. I'm not that big of a hater of them like some other people are. They're definitely not the strongest puzzles from any of the palaces, but they're still fun to figure out. Are there a bit too many of them? Probably, but again, not that big of a problem in my opinion. Also, the bit where Ryuji seemingly sacrifices himself, then appears safely, only to cut to him knocked out on the floor from the girls beating him up, was so funny to me. It's definitely one of my favorite comedic moments from the game. And with that, the game is done. We took down the biggest bad guy, and, you know, we may have lost some precious stuff to us along the way, but, you know, that's fine. We did it, so let the credits roll. Except, not really. See, even though we did change the heart of Big Bad Shido, the public literally could not give a single care. So per Moan Garner's suggestion, the gang go on a little recon trip to see what the problem is. Palace 8, Yaldabaoth. Hope you've been doing your side quest, because we gotta go all the way to the bottom of Mementos. When the gang get there, they find a metric crap ton of people locked away behind cells. Even all the big bad guys whose hearts we changed are all here, like it's some kind of Smash Bros. Ultimate type beat. I gotta say, I surprisingly like this palace. It should feel super rushed and half-baked, seeing as it pretty much acts solely as a segue between Shido and, well, you know, going to fight God, but it's fun. I really like the platform puzzles. They're simple, but they're effective, and the enemies we start to fight, plus the whole aesthetics of the area, really start building hype towards the climax of the game. So the group of merry misfits eventually delve all the way to the Earth's core, and find in a large Colosseum-type area, the final boss,
The drink.
This is the final fight, and Joker and crew really try and give it their all, but
The drink.
it's just too strong. It fills itself with lean, so it's able to continuously heal itself. Like, that's fair. Only I'm allowed to heal in this video game. But because of that, we lose. But not all hope is lost. He merely just chucks us out of mementos and allows us to recuperate before trying again. Except the world isn't the same here. There's a Terraria blood moon right now, and oh my god, we're all slowly disappearing. Oh, Mr. Stark, I don't feel too good. So yeah, we awaken the, Velvet Room, where once again, we're being told we failed, and it's time for execution, King George style. Did King George even die that way, or have anything to do with execution? I don't know, I don't care anymore. Being a little fate denier we are, we get out of our prison suit and stand up to the executioners, something Joker never thought of doing in the last 80 hours of gameplay, but whatever. So after a bit of fighting and gaslighting, Joker convinces the twins that something is seemingly sus, and this causes them to do the fusion dance, creating their final form, Girl with Book. Girl with Book then Uno reverse cards the fight onto Igor, who is revealed to be the actual villain. Not really doing any favors for that deep voice equals evil stereotype, is he? So with this, the real Igor returns, and we're tasked with rescuing our team from the greatest evil of all, depression. So Joker has to go to each of them individually, give them a little pep talk, and then the Phantom Thieves are finally back together. Oh, and Morgana's here. Stupid little cat. Wait, actually he is a cat? Huh, who would have thunk? So with that little tidbit now solved, Igor gives us our final goal. To kill God. Wow, sort of jumping to the deep end here, aren't we? This final reveal is a pretty satisfying one. I'm not sure how Igor operates in the other Persona games, but in P5R, the whole Velvet Room and its characters do a really good job at unsettling the player. Ever since the beginning of the game, you can tell there's definitely something up with Igor and the twins, but that actual something is really hard to decipher, which makes the twist that Igor is Yaldabaoth work and not feel out of place. The pep talks that Joker has to give his teammates though are a little hit or miss. It feels like some characters were prioritized a lot higher than some others. Like Makoto's talk was related to her trauma well, and it felt like Joker actually talked to her. Whereas some like Yusuke are just pretty much nothing, just them saying, oh, I feel useless, and then after a few words from Joker, they're like, oh, I'm not useless. These weaker one-on-one talks are still completely serviceable though and work with the plot, but I'm just trying to say that me as the player could easily see a difference throughout them, with some of them being, you know, really good and then just someone just being really mid. Also, I like the reveal of Morgana as someone sent to help guide Joker, the chosen champion or whatever, but it was a little predictable. If you were to ask me like 20 hours in on my playthrough what Morgana's true identity would be, I would say there's a pretty good chance I would guess something that's like someone who helps people chase their destiny or chase their fate or, you know, something along those lines. It is quite satisfying though, seeing everyone's character arcs start coming to a close though. So, with the Phantom Thieves on their way to kill literally God, they must first face every gamer's truest fear, a hallway simulator. You have to walk down not just one, not two, but 3 whole hallways. Absolutely riveting content here, lads. Anyway, along the way you have to kill God's angels or some shit. They're probably a cool reference to like the Bible or something, but we're not here for that. We're here to kill literally God. His first phase is a familiar one,
The drink.
but now the team is filled with determination, and Joker can send anyone to go and cut the lean supply, making the drink take his final form, Yaldabaoth, a titanic deity that makes the gang look like nothing compared to him. Yaldabaoth is quite the fan of us though, sporting his own gun and sword, just like us. Also, he has a book and a bell though, but he's a fan, don't let this convince you otherwise. Also, this guy is tough as balls. You're gonna have to use everything you learned as Phantom Thieves to beat him. Then the game does this typical thing of you beat the boss in the fight, but then he wins in the cutscene. But that's fine though, because Joker asks the world to lend him their energy and gathers up a spirit bomb and kills the god himself. And by spirit bomb, I mean mega badass kaiju persona. And by kill, I mean a fucking bullet through the skull. Metal. And with that, Morgana fades away. Finally, took him long enough. And the group go on a road trip. Aw, cute. Curtain call, Finn. I love everything about this end part. I don't know if that's just because of the sheer length of the game and finally seeing it end is super satisfying, or if it's the conclusion that it's some of the most badass raw shit I've seen in a game before. I really enjoyed the fight against Yaldabaoth as well. Its requirement for the player to use literally every single mechanic they've mastered up to this point is super well done, along with its design and its sheer scale being awesome as well. And I know throughout this video I've pretty much only ragged on Morgana, but I'll admit it, I, a grown man, cried at his farewell to the party. Do I think that moment sorta loses a little impact when he's just fine and with the gang at the end anyways? Maybe, but we've known these characters for so long at this point, where I'm so okay with them all having a happy ending, which is why I love the road trip ending so much. All their hard work is finally done, and they get to spend time together, not as Phantom Thieves, but as real friends, and I just think that's absolutely awesome sauce. Now, anyone that has played Persona 5 Royal knows about the third semester, with the Ninth Palace and the new endings. However, as I just said, I actually missed this whole part of my first playthrough, and yeah, it's sort of my fault for not leveling up Maruki's confident, but when the game told me he was leaving soon and to definitely hang out with him, I tried to find him, but I honestly just could not remember for the life of me where he actually was in the game. Could I have just looked up his location and missed this whole ordeal? Yeah, definitely. Anyway, in conclusion, this whole final palace was super duper cool. Awesome boss fight, amazing cutscenes, little bit of a lackluster palace with it just being hallways, but that's sort of fine because we've done so much palace exploring, so just having something super clean and easy before the final boss is fine. Awesome and happy ending, cool. Let's move on to Persona 5 Royal exclusive content, and a little teaser, this is my favorite part of the game. Palace 9, Takeru Maruki. So when a girl threw herself off the building at the start of the game, still can't believe the game led with that by the way, the school staff, like trying to put a fucking band-aid on an axe wound, hired a therapist to talk with the students. His name is Maruki, and the most interesting thing about him is that in his official art, he's drinking some appy juice. So yeah, he's sort of goated like that. Throughout the entirety of the game, he manages to talk one-on-one with every member of the Phantom Thieves, and extensively with Joker, with what we thought was a therapy session, was him getting dirt on us about where we landed on the trauma Wheel of Fortune. Anyways, he will be important soon, but first we gotta turn ourselves into the police so we can truly deal with Shido, but someone decides to take the blame for us instead. That's right baby, Sketchy Akechi is back, let's go! And I gotta say, he is looking and acting even more sketchy than ever before. So with that, Joker is able to join the rest of the gang and live happily ever after. Almost. Turns out, our suspicions that something was a rise were correct, and everybody's trauma they spun on the trauma Wheel of Fortune has mysteriously reverted. Joker, outraged that everyone has no free time now because they're all living their best life, instantly starts trying to figure out what the flip is happening. And conveniently, too conveniently, Sketchy also appears, having the exact same thought process as Joker. Also, Kasumi's here. You know, the redhead chick that calls you senpai. Come on, don't act like you didn't immediately fall in love with her the first time you met her. When I heard what the premise for the royal content was, being, you know, the Ninth Palace in the third semester, I thought this was going to be a real chill, sort of like beach episode vibe with, you know, everyone getting together one last time, dishing out justice, you know, but the way this arc starts is just not what I was expecting at all. I haven't been this curious about what direction the story was going in a long time, and I found it really hard to put the game down as I was so into trying to figure out what the flip was happening. I will quickly mention though, since I missed the Ninth Palace in my first playthrough, I had to look up how to actually get there. So I was spoiled about the palace ruler being Maruki, so I didn't really get that oh shit moment when he was revealed to be the opposing force for this section. So with most of the gang stuck living happy lives together, the current Phantom Thieves are made up of yourself, Sketchy, and Kasumi, the redhead. They managed to find the palace which, coincidentally again, man, there are a lot of coincidences in this arc, happens to be the area where Redhead first awakened to her persona. So the makeshift gang make their way through this palace, with Akechi, now not having to hide his personality, starts tweaking the fuck out on anything that looks at him funny. Eventually, we make it to the palace ruler, who reveals himself to be the appy juice lover himself, Maruki, and god damn, that homeboy is dripping in sauce, sheesh! Oh yeah, he also just casually mentions that Kasumi is actually Sumire, and is just cosplaying as her dead sister because she hated herself so much for causing her death. Yeah, it was at this point when I definitely didn't think there was going to be a beach episode arc anymore. My mouth was on the floor at this reveal. I genuinely felt so bad for Sumire. Watching the cutscene was so riveting, and when we see a side of Maruki choosing to continue hiding her grief, you can almost not blame the poor girl, to be honest. We'll talk about it a bit more later, but this sort of stuff is what makes Maruki such an amazing villain. And yes, I said villain. I watched a deep dive video of someone making the point that he is, yes, a villain and not an antagonist, so I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about here. I also don't know if I'll mention it anywhere else, so I just want to say here how much I love Akechi. He's definitely one of, if not my favorite characters from Persona 5 Royal. Also, his showtime with Joker goes so hard. That one and the Joker Sumire one are easily my favorites out of them, and it makes me mad that Joker doesn't get showtimes with anyone else in the crew because these ones are just so good. So with Kasumire turning to the dark side, the gang gets even smaller with only Joker and Sketchy remaining. Maruki, being the absolute villain that he is, decides to give us a week to explore his new reality and expects an answer by the end, in hopes that we can accept his happy reality. You know, the longer this arc goes on, the more I think that we're the bad guys. I mean, our only ally right now is quite literally a serial killer. So during this week, we go to visit each teammate and try and subtly gaslight them into believing this reality is fake. This, shockingly, works quite easily, because when you and Sketchy return to face off with Maruki, the entire gang swoop in and help us out. We eventually rescue Kasumire, and having Maruki cornered, he does the most villainous thing of all. Gives us even more time to accept his ideals for ourselves. Again, this guy seems like the good guy, and we're just all sort of ganging up on him, poor fella. Maruki's palace is probably the best one in the game. It's easily an S tier area. There's such a big variety in the puzzles and the locations. Also, the palace theme encompasses the mood perfectly, being almost gentle but also communicating a sort of deity vibe, being exactly what Maruki is as a character. I will say one of the puzzles, the one where you have multiple choice options and you have to pick the one that you think Maruki would choose, that one was awful. I think it's a bit of a mix of the puzzle not being that clear along with me just being a complete dumbass. But even though I wasn't a fan of the puzzle, I won't dock the game that many points because, you know, dumbass here. I did like the other puzzles though, especially the color-coded ones, which I feel like might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. But talking more about what the game is trying to convey Maruki as, they did such a good job at making him seem sincere, because he genuinely is. So much so that there were multiple times where I began to second guess myself about whether this reality truly was the better one, especially when anything happened with Sumire. So throughout the palace, we get a little deep dive into Maruki's mind, and learn a few things, like why he's doing what he's doing, how he's doing what he's doing, and why he loves Appy Juice so much. Turns out his girlfriend's parents sorta died in front of her, and that led her to spiral out of control and develop some severe trauma. Trauma so deep that not even Appy Juice could cure it. This leads to Maruki to begin to awaken his persona, which allows him to change the psyche of anyone. This power continues to grow until we, the Phantom Thieves, defeat Yaldabaoth, and, again, coincidentally, this causes Maruki to enter his final form and take the role of God for himself. When we finally meet up with Maruki for the last time, he gives us his final offer. Take the red Appy Juice and live a content, happy life with everyone together forever. Or take the blue Appy Juice and face off with him one last time for the fight for reality. Obviously, since Maruki is the bad guy, we take the reality where everyone is happy forever. Nah, I'm just playing, we're beating the shit out of him. His first phase of the boss fight has a lot of tentacles, which reminds me of something I watched not too long ago that I'm not really allowed to talk about on YouTube. Maruki, being the gentleman he is, also realizes this and turns his persona into a massive kaiju monster. This kaiju monster ain't enough for the team though, because through the power of friendship, they managed to stall Maruki long enough for Joker to get the final hit in, and in the most cheesy, most badass, most Joker fashion, he delivers the final line, checkmate. With this, the palace starts falling apart, and it looks dire for the gang, but Morgana, doing his best helicopter impression, actually turns into one and flies us all away. However, Maruki is not done just yet, and challenges Joker one last time. Maruki, justifyingly, crashes out on Joker, and to quote him directly, I gave up everything! Everything! Eventually, Joker is able to save Maruki from his clouded judgment. Instead of a road trip, the group, somewhat solemnly, decide to go their separate ways for now, in order to become the people they want to be. Wow, what an arc. Maruki is genuinely one of my favorite villains in just anything ever. What Maruki wants is truly heroic. He wants to create a world where no one has to feel pain and can live their happiest lives with the people they love. However, the way he goes about achieving this world is no different to that of Yaldabaoth, the literal god of control. This desire of his explains perfectly why he has a palace in the first place, even though he himself and his end goal have good intentions. It's so hard at any point to hate or dislike Maruki, unlike any other of the palace owners so far besides Futaba. And his voice actor gives such a compelling delivery, especially towards the end. The final fistfight between yourself and him is so heartbreaking. Seeing Maruki lose everything he's worked towards, calling out to his roomie one last time, even though he said himself that he was content with not being with her anymore. Billy Kometz truly gave the performance of a lifetime, and it's deeply saddening that he passed away at such a young age. As for the new Royal ending, I've been somewhat mixed on it for a while. My very first initial thought was that I thought it was significantly worse than the vanilla ending in pretty much every way, but the more time that passes, the more I start to like it. I still think the vanilla ending is way more satisfying and happy, but it definitely feels like the Royal ending does more for the characters themselves, as it feels like they've all truly become adults now, and they've truly learned what's important in life. I think the quick goodbye to Team Give Joker is actually quite sweet, because they're not really saying goodbye. It's more of a see you later, because they know they're going to meet again. I feel like Sumire definitely should have had a more definitive goodbye though. Like, I get she kept it short because Joker was being trailed by the police, but come on. I also don't think Akechi is alive. I think that shot of him walking by was meant to just tie into the next shot. The one of Joker taking off his mask one last time and leaving that life behind. I'll talk more about Akechi in the next segment of the video, but I quickly want to talk about him and Joker at the start of his palace. Now, I'm going to theorize here, so I just might be completely wrong, but this is why I think Joker was able to tell reality was warped while no one else could. So Maruki gave all the Phantom Thieves what he thought was their ideal world, right? And he almost did it. However, Joker was already living in what he wanted to be his ideal world, so when Maruki changed it, he noticed immediately, and since Akechi was part of Joker's cognition, he was able to tell something was arise as well. Again, no clue if any of that's true, but that's just my take. Also, the bad ending of the game was so interesting to go and watch. They did such a great job at making something so happy seem so off-putting. Like, it's really obvious that something is off, but no one wants to or ever will notice it. So yeah, if it wasn't obvious by how much I talked about this arc already compared to the other ones, this is my favourite part of Persona 5 Royal, and it's sort of hard to think about playing vanilla without getting to experience this. Okay, so with that quick story explanation now finished, what are my overall thoughts on the story? Well, it was nothing short of amazing. Going into this game blind was an absolute treat, as the problems they tackle are surprisingly mature and deep. Though at a few points the story seems to halt or take a nosedive in quality, looking at you Akumura Palace, these little blips aren't nearly enough to bring down the overall quality of the story as a whole. But in my opinion, for a game's story to be truly amazing, the story itself needs an amazing cast of characters to pair alongside it, and oh boy does Persona 5 have some absolutely amazing characters. Let's move on to the next part of the video. The characters in this game are spectacular. That's it, that's the segment, moving on. Nah, I'm just kidding. You really thought I wasn't going to talk about what is maybe the strongest aspect of this game? So anyway, Persona 5 Royal characters work on a system called Social Links, where you get to choose who you want to spend time with. And spending more time with your chosen people will level them up, giving you new abilities from them, as well as offering the next stage in their individual storyline. That's right, the 20-something characters in this game all have their own individual storylines that have their own character arcs. However, not every storyline was created equally. I will say though, I absolutely love the Social Link system. It creates this individuality to each and every Persona 5 playthrough, resulting in almost no two people's playthrough being the exact same, which I will touch on further in the gameplay part of the video. But like, for example, my playthrough was extremely unique because I maxed out Mommy Takemi's Confidant in the first 2 months. I'm not joking. I literally spent every waking moment in the first few months tending to her every need and want. I maxed out my charm to level 5 while all my other stats were only like level 2, and I did all of this for her just to friendzone me in the end. So, anyways, I'm not going to talk about every single confidant and their story and whatnot, because that's like a whole video in itself. I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that I did and ones that I thought were pretty good, and also talk about some that were, less good. For context though, in my playthrough, I managed to rank 10 Tai Takemi, Yuki Mishima, Sojiro Sakura, Futaba Sakura, who was also my romance, and finally Ryuji Sakamoto. Then, on my second playthrough where I sped run to the 9th palace, I maxed out Goro Akechi, Takuto Maruki, Sumire Yoshizawa, who I romanced, and finally, Munihisai Iwai. Okay, let's talk about him. Tai Takemi, a doctor that lives nearby your cafe home. People say she's to be avoided due to some shady aspects of the business she seems to be involved in. Also, she's attractive. Like, extremely attractive. Like, I would let her spit in my mouth and I would gargle it. Like, I would let her drive the heels on her shoes deep into my back, so much so that I start bleeding, and I would apologize to her because of it. Like, I would literally kill Morgana 10 times over just to breathe the same air as her. So your role in her story is to be her guinea pig and test her medicine for her. Eventually, we find out that apparently she was trying to cure a terminally ill patient but was taken off the project and pretty much outcast everywhere. This mean person keeps coming to remind her of that, so we go into mementos, change the dude's heart, and Takemi is no longer an outcast. The rest of her confidant is her finally making the cure from her research with us and cures the patient. Putting aside her extreme attractiveness, Takemi's confidant is an incredibly solid one. It's sweet, develops her character well, and has fun interactions between her and Joker, and offers some really good abilities. Overall, a very, very good social link, and one I don't regret doing in the first 3 months. Yep, that really did happen. Yuki Mishima. Mishima was one of the many victims from Kamoshida's abuse during the start of the game. After Kamoshida's dealt with though, Mishima dedicates his free time to running the Phantom Thief fan forum website. He gives us helpful info like information on big targets, and even the little ones that the group can go and help in mementos. However, after some time, the power of running the website goes to Mishima's head, and he starts getting a little bit egotistical. So the gang go into mementos to find his distorted desire. However, we don't actually change his heart. Instead, we let him change it himself. After having learned his lesson, Mishima becomes a lot more content with himself, no longer thinking of himself as a loser. I'm gonna say this now, Mishima's confidant is very close to being my favourite, so no Mishima slander will ever be tolerated while I'm here. His character arc is incredibly engaging, and it's so realistic. If his egotistical nature made you hate him, then good, that's what it was meant to do. Show that he's being misguided right now. I absolutely love the fact that we don't actually change his heart though, letting he himself realize his problem and change himself. And also, during that final boss fight when everyone's cheering you on, and he calls Joker his best friend, oh my god, I teared up at that, I won't lie. I think Mishima comfortably lands in my second place spot for confidants. Sojiro Sakura. Sojiro acts as the father figure for the game, taking us in when no one else would, even if the reasons he took us in weren't exactly very noble. His whole confidant is him starting to warm up to us, teaching us the ropes of running a cafe. Eventually, the story shifts when Futaba is introduced, pivoting to Sojiro struggling to keep his makeshift family together. Eventually, the confidant ends with Sojiro accepting us as family and learning what it means to be a father to both Futaba and Joker. I feel like every single player should do Sojiro's confidant. It gives amazing abilities as well as an incredibly sweet storyline that really makes you feel for Sojiro. Again, that final scene where he accepts us as family really made me tear up. It sort of sucks that most of the confidant stories aren't fully voice acted, but all the final ranks are, so it makes those moments hit even harder. So yeah, an incredibly good confidant that everyone should definitely do. But I won't lie, I did feel a wee bit guilty when Sojiro told us not to date his daughter. Futaba Sakura. She's introduced as part of the story, being a palace ruler whose desire we have to cure. However, like Mishima, we never actually steal her heart. She is able to come to a conclusion herself and become better. Her confidant story is a little scattershot, being mainly about her trying to overcome her social anxiety. Throughout this though, she reconnects with a friend from her childhood who was, and still is, being abused by her parents, so we go into mementos, change the parents' hearts, and Futaba and the girl become friends again. The end of the confidant shows Futaba finally being okay with leaving the house, and not being a shut-in anymore. However, through her romance route, this instead becomes her not having to worry about her social anxiety anymore, as she now has you to do stuff with, so there's nothing to be worried about anymore. Also, Futaba calls Mishima an NPC, easily the funniest joke in the game, if not in the history of the universe. Futaba's confidant is okay. It's definitely not on the same level as the previous 3 we just talked about, but it's definitely not bad either. Her confidant is probably the funniest one I did though, but I'm pretty sure that's just because Futaba is just the funniest character in this game. I do think doing her romance route sorta ruins her character development a little bit, to be honest, with her pretty much saying she doesn't need to get over her social anxiety, because she will always be with you now, but I don't know. To be honest, I think the romance in this game is just a little bit mid altogether, but I'll talk about that later. Ryuji Sakamoto. Ryuji is the first person Joker meets that actually talks to him and doesn't look at him with absolute disgust. Ryuji's confidence involves him moving on from the trauma that was Kamoshida, and him coming to terms with not being able to join the track team anymore, due to both the injury Kamoshida gave him and the hatred the team has for Ryuji. Even though the track team hate Ryuji, he does everything he can behind the scenes to make sure the team starts back up as smoothly as possible, even going into Mementos to change the heart of someone who wants to exploit the new team. This going into Mementos thing is a pretty common event in every Confidant. Eventually the team starts up again, but Ryuji still decides not to join, saying he still wants to run, but this isn't the place for him anymore. Ryuji fits that best friend stereotype so perfectly. They could never make me hate you, Ryuji. I will pick you over Morgana any day of the week. His Confidant is pretty good as well. It shows his goals very well and gives him great character development, even if that means he has to get beat up for it. That scene was a little bit strange, I won't lie. Plus, he gives possibly the best Confidant ability in the game, the ability to insta-kill weaker enemies. Definitely another Confidant that is 100% worth doing. Goro Akechi, a Persona 5 Royal exclusive Confidant. Originally, Akechi's Confidant would automatically level up, and you couldn't hang out with him at all. This led to some pretty comical moments, like Joker saying their bond has increased and levels up to Confidant, all while Akechi is literally pointing a gun at him and is moments away from popping open his skull. However, in Royal, he now has a Confidant that works like most others, where you can choose to spend time with him. His Confidant isn't super story heavy compared to the others, since he is such a big force within the main story, but his Confidant events act as such good development for his character, with him and Joker pretty much just going on dates together. Akechi's new Confidant is really damn good, and if you actually hang out with him, it makes his eventual betrayal all the more devastating. The whole being able to actually choose if you want to hang out with him is also really nice, because apparently in vanilla Persona 5, he felt incredibly forced upon the player, and that made people hate him just for the wrong reasons. So it's really interesting to see how a character can go from that to a fan favourite. Sadly, his Confidant doesn't extend to the 9th Palace at all, but even without that, Akechi is one of, if not my favourite characters from Persona 5 Royal, and safely puts himself in that number 1 position for my favourite Confidant. I could talk about this character so much more, but that feels like it could be its own video, and I'm just trying to talk about the Confidants here. So next up, Takuru Maruki. Another Royal exclusive Confidant, Maruki is introduced really early in the story and acts as a counselor to any student who is interested. Well, Joker and the others are pretty much told to go do it, but whatever. Maruki's Confidant ranks are counseling sessions with Joker, where he talks about how Joker is feeling, and eventually leading to them discussing the effects of one's psyche and the ability to change heart/cognitions. Unknowingly, this eventually leads to Maruki becoming literally God, but he brought you Tempura on the rank 10 event, so all's fine and dandy. Maruki's Confidant it's alright. I'm not the biggest fan of it, as I thought he was just a little bit dull, and the Confidant ranks weren't all that interesting. And this is how I ended up missing the 9th Palace in my first playthrough, which I'm still salty about, but whatever. But when you look at him as a required Confidant instead, I think he's definitely better than some of the other required Confidants in the game, like Morgana and Sai. Also, his Confidant abilities are just like giga busted, and you have so much time to actually do his Confidant as well, so he's definitely one that every player should do 100%. But personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of his Confidant. However, that does not mean I don't like him. That should be obvious of how much I talked about him already. I really, really, really like Maruki. I just thought his actual Confidant events itself were just a little bit boring. Kasumi Yoshizawa. This Confidant is sorta interesting, as it only ranks up to level 5, whereas every other one goes up to level 10. Obviously, we know the reason for this, but let's talk quickly about Kasumi's events. These ranks pretty much just involve you hanging out with Kasumi, where she confides in you her worries about not being enough, with everyone having such high expectations for her, and having to carry her dead sister's dreams on her shoulders. These Confidant ranks are fun, not really much else. They're mostly carried by Kasumi herself, because she's a pretty fun character. However, since there are only 5 ranks, we don't actually get to spend a lot of time with Kasumi. However, she does have a lot of story interactions, and a lot of those are quite good, especially the dance scene that was animated. That was awesome. Anyway, after Kasumi is revealed to actually be Sumire, her supposed dead sister, she spends a lot of time coming to grips with this, and when she does, her Confidant expands, gaining the true Tarot card of faith and unlocking the last 5 ranks. These last 5 ranks involve Sumire dealing with her trauma, and learning to become her own person, and not live based on the expectations that other people give her. When you romance her, this further gives her this confidence and says that she can truly strive for the goal she wants because she knows that you are there cheering her on. These last few ranks really make this confidant go from like an alright out of 10 to a pretty dang good out of 10. Her romance event as well was pretty dang cute, and I thought it was better than Futaba's, but that was all I really liked about the romance. Again, I think the romance in this game is pretty mid, but we'll get there, don't worry. Doing Kasumi's confidant ranks though on the first playthrough to actually get to Sumire's ranks is pretty tough, because Kasumi doesn't really pop up that often, so it's pretty slim to finish her if you haven't avidly been trying. And even though the Sumire stuff is pretty dang good, it's definitely not a confidant I would recommend over some of the others we've talked about. So yeah, a very solid confidant that I'm definitely glad I did, but I probably wouldn't recommend. Munahisai Iwai. Iwai owns a fake gun store. This is the place where the Phantom Thieves buy their weapons to use in palaces. During one of your first interactions with Iwai, he gives you a brown paper bag to smuggle from the cops. You know, just a regular day for Joker. So after you get your guts to level 4, Jesus Christ, you can actually start as confidant. Iwai's confidant actually is really unexpected, with it starting with helping Iwai close deals and helping around the store. It eventually leads into dealing with the Yakuza and Iwai trying his best to protect his adopted son. Eventually, Iwai is at a standstill with an old pal from the Yakuza, who is using blackmail to get his way, so he enters Mementos to change his heart. That isn't it though, because afterwards, Iwai's son is kidnapped, and Iwai confronts the kidnappee, with us in tow. And Iwai and his son have a nice heart-to-heart, and then the Yakuza member whose heart we changed before comes and rescues us. Wow. Iwai is 100% my underrated pick for confidants. He has a really strict entry condition, and is tucked away in a little alleyway, so I pretty much forgot he existed on my playthrough. But I'm definitely glad I went back and did it, because it goes so hard. Iwai is extremely likable, and seeing him try to protect his son from what he thinks will give him a hard life, to then telling them and seeing them bond is just so sweet. Also, I hadn't mentioned yet, but each confidant has dialogue choices for Joker to pick, and if you pick the right one, your confidant will grow faster. I'm mentioning this because Iwai's correct dialogue options are super funny. The correct choices are always saying stuff like, "Iwai, you're such a bitch," or telling people you killed a man. It's just super funny. Iwai's confidant was easily the one I was the most surprised that was so good. Alright, time to quickly talk about some confidants I didn't really like. These are ones that I started doing in my playthrough and then avidly decided to stop doing because I just didn't like them. Starting with Makoto Nijima. Her confidant story revolves around her duties in the student council and her struggles with trying to help a friend that doesn't want her help. Sounds like an okay premise for a confidant, right? You joining in on Makoto's duties as the student council president and helping her out. Well, that's just the problem. That's all the confidant is. Makoto's own confidant revolves around a character that's not even important enough to get an avatar next to their speech bubble. This chick gets more screen time than Makoto herself, and when she's not there, it's pretty much still all Makoto will talk about. This one is extra disappointing, because on one of the confidant ranks, Makoto opens up to us about her father, how much she misses him, and how life's been ever since he died. This was awesome and one of my favourite confidant ranks in the game, so I don't know why they fumbled with the rest. I want to let it be known as well, Makoto is one of my favourite characters from this game, so I'm not just blindly hating on her, I just think her confidant is completely doo-doo water, and it just makes me mad thinking about it. Also, speaking about things that make me mad, Chihaya Mifune, a fortune teller who we first meet in Shinjuku. She has a requirement to start a confidant, like many others do, but it's not a social stat or anything. You have to pay $100,000 for an item that just breaks immediately. Yeah, I know that money isn't really a problem in this game, and I'm sure the rest of her confidant might be cool, and I know she gives good abilities as well, but it's about the principle. She robbed us in broad daylight, and when we come back to confront her, she had the gall to try and blame us. Again, it's probably a cool confidant, but I lost interest after that. Next up, Haru Okumura. Yeah, that's all I really gotta say for her. I didn't do any of her confidant because she didn't really have any strong character traits, and to be honest, I really don't blame her for it. It's not her fault that in her introduction arc, that stupid cat Morgana was given more screen time, and since we were entering the endgame after that, she just didn't have any time to shine whatsoever. I want to put money on it that her confidant is probably really good. I just had literally zero interest in doing it, especially when there were other characters that were just more interesting that I could spend time with. The last one I'm going to put in this didn't like section is Yusuke. Now, wait up, hold up, put down your pitchforks. I know for a fact that Yusuke's confidant in the later levels is amazing, as I both watched a few of them and I also got to play some of them. But good god, are the first few ranks boring as all hell. I swear I spent what seemed like an eternity with Yusuke in the early game, only to figure out I was only like 2 or 3 ranks deep in his Confidant. I love Yusuke as a character though, and his Confidant is easily at the top of my list for an eventual second playthrough. So that's the main Confidants I wanted to talk about. I didn't get to most of them, because a lot of them I didn't get far enough through, I haven't watched any videos about them, or I just didn't have any strong feelings towards. Doing a complete and ranking of them all is definitely something I want to do at some point, but right now I want to talk a little bit more about the characters themselves. Persona 5 Royal is able to do something that few games are able to do with their cast of characters, and that makes them seem like actual real human beings. A lot of games it's very obvious that the people in the game are not real, that they're just a means to move along the story or give an item or something like that. But the characters in P5R, especially the Phantom Thieves, feel like a real bunch of people. The way everyone in the Phantom Thieves talks with each other feels like the writers secretly studied a group of friends in real life for months, then used that research to write their dialogue. The way everyone has their own little quirks, their own little changes in how they speak depending on who they're talking to, and the little running jokes between them is so real. Some of my favourites include the constant bickering between Futaba and Yusuke, like, everyone could be talking about something completely random, and then all of a sudden these two would be at each other's throats. An and Ryuji is another amazing one. I love how Ryuji knows he's dumb as shit, whereas An just sort of lives in that blissful ignorance. Also, when An says she'll go on a date with Ryuji as a reward, and Ryuji just straight up says F that, is so hilarious. I love how Makoto likes to take charge, but gets flustered easily. The scene where she's clinging to Joker's leg and Futaba jumpscares her had me cackling for such a good while. I want everyone talking in the group chat together. I love everything about Futaba. I just loved his cast of characters, and I haven't seen one this strong since Final Fantasy VII. I saw a clip the other day of one of the developers talking about during COVID, people weren't able to see their friends, and the Phantom Thieves had to take the role of that, and I can honestly believe that so easily. P5R also does an absolutely amazing job with character arcs, and not shoving down our throats how they've changed, and they do it really subtly. One of my favourite examples of this is An's acting, because at the start of the game she is absolutely dog shit at acting, but near the end she's able to flawlessly pull off a British accent and fool a nobleman. Also, Ryuji not wanting anything to do with track at the start of the game, just sprinting to get the lifeboat in Shido's palace, or Sojiro going from humouring us to genuinely caring about us, or Futaba not wanting to be a shut-in anymore. I could honestly go on and on and on about this. One last thing I did want to talk about though before giving my final thoughts about the characters as a whole is the villains. These guys are intimidating, and I like how every one of them has such a distinct form of corruption. The fact that I can name them all off the top of my head when I struggle to remember names of characters and animes I've recently watched really shows how effective they are. Also, there's Maruki, but I've talked at length about him already. But I'm gonna talk more, baby! How is Maruki so intimidating, yet so friendly, yet so evil, yet so pure? Like, this man wants to take over the world with kindness. I love how he's aware of his own palace and will happily play the bad guy in order to achieve a world where everyone will be happy, even if that means sacrificing the world before it and his own connections to literally everyone he cares about. Maruki honestly might get his own video, because good lord, he's just such a fantastic character. But, massive but, moving on, I thought the romance in this game was severely underwhelming and disappointing. I said a few times that I went into this game blind, so it made a lot of things hit a lot harder for the first time. But one of the only things I knew about Persona games was that pretty much every girl was romanceable. So having heard so much about it, I was sort of hyped to see what the romance was like in this game, and yeah, it's not great. To go into detail, the romance just sort of feels so tacked on for a lot of the game. For example, when I romanced Futaba in my playthrough, and this happened pretty early as well, since then to Christmas Eve, which was multiple months, there was exactly one time where she had unique dialogue because we were in a relationship. Being when someone asks you about marriage, and if you say you thought about it, she will blush. There's a good chance that if you picked any of the other two options as well, she would have just not even reacted. Also, it's a massive kick in the face that the Christmas Eve date is just you hiding you're about to go to jail from her, and then they get understandably really upset at you. With Futaba specifically, I felt the romance also just sort of ruined her character development a little bit, but that just might be a her thing, because I didn't feel the same with Sumire. The biggest insult with the romance though is the final date. We don't even get a kiss scene, like, come on. Maybe I really was just sold dreams here, but the romance is one of the only things in this game that feels like it was just sort of tacked on after everything has been made already. Also, I get it as a video game, but the whole Joker being able to date women that are like 10 years older than him while he's still a minor is a little off-putting. Like, you reverse the genders in that situation and suddenly it's creepy as fuck. On a more positive note though, the voice acting in this game is flawless. Incredible, inspiring, anything you want to say. I'm usually a massive stick in the mud when it comes to dub actors in Japanese media, but I'm so glad I played it in dub, because the voice actors all do such an amazing job. So amazing that it's really noticeable when the dialogue isn't voiced. And sadly, I feel like this happens a little bit more than it should. But that makes the moments where it is fully voiced even more amazing. Joker's voice actor is amazing as well, and it makes me sad that he just doesn't have more voice lines. I sort of wish that instead of being this blank slate that he is, Joker was just an actual character, but that just might be a me thing. Also, Yusei is voiced by Matt Mercer. I'm not joking, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I learned that. So yeah, as I said at the start of this section, the characters in this game are just nothing short of spectacular. They achieve a perfect blend of all feeling like they fit in this fictional story, yet they also feel like real human beings. And yes, while I didn't enjoy some of the characters as much as other, that's sort of the whole point of the game. They give you so many characters with different personalities and such, so that you, the player, can choose how you want to play, leaning into that everyone's playthrough is unique aspect of the game that I adore so much. The hits keep coming with this game though, because next up we're talking about Persona 5 Royal has one of the best turn-based combats I've ever played in a video game before, which is praise in itself, but sorta crazy because the combat is only half of the gameplay in this game. Because yes, while the turn-based combat is the main meat of the game, there is so much exploring, social links to complete, minigames to spend your time on. This game has so many mechanics, so much that it literally needs the opening palace to act as that 10-hour tutorial. So don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the combat in the Persona series is loosely based off the Shin Megami series, which is also made by Atlus. I assume this because I know the Shin Megami games are well known for having some of the best JRPG combat in just any game ever, so it makes sense that Persona would be inspired by it. Alright, I'm going to try my best to quickly cover what the combat is like in this game, but it's got so many mechanics I probably am going to miss a few of them. Okay, here goes. You and 3 members of your choice make up your team. You have multiple tools you can use on any turn. You can whack them with your weapon, pop a fool with your Blicky, use items, bitch made, guard, bitch made, or issue commands to your team. Similar to Pokemon, every Persona has its own resists and weaknesses. However, if you manage to exploit an enemy's weakness, you get as what are called a 1 more, being just an extra turn to do whatever you want. However, during a 1 more, you get one extra option, the Baton Pass. This lets you pass your extra turn to any character in your party, and this stacks, meaning you can Baton Pass up to 3 times, resulting in big, massive damage. Additionally, instead when you've managed to knock down all the enemies, your squad will surround them in what's called a hold up. Here, you can either try discussing with the enemy for them either to give you their stuff or join your team, or you can fully jump the poor bastards, dealing major damage, and if you've managed to kill them all with this attack, you get a badass windscreen. Baton Pass is possibly one of the most fun mechanics I've ever used. It's so extremely satisfying and fun to pull off every time. There's so many other things with the combat as well, with so many of the confidants giving extra abilities, some of my favourites being the Sexy Talk ability, where Ann is able to stop an enemy attack randomly, which has come in clutch so often. Also the Gun Hail ability, where sometimes on an ambush, the entire team will just unload an absolute barrage of bullets into the enemy for free. Speaking of ambushes, it's the ability to sneak up on an enemy and get the first few hits in for free. The animation for this was always so satisfying to pull off, and I never got bored. Notice how I've been saying satisfying a lot. That's just because that's the way the combat in this game is like. Satisfying. The game still manages to continue being fresh though, even for its 80-hour runtime. This is helped by the sheer quantity of enemies you can face, with each palace having certain personas that only spawn in that area, and also the bosses of each palace. I've talked about this a little already in the story section, but the boss fights do a really good job at separating themselves from basic encounters while still being challenging. These fights require the player to learn the mechanic the boss is trying to teach, and if you don't, the fight is either significantly harder or just straight up impossible. One area that can get somewhat repetitive though in terms of content is definitely mementos. This area is just an array of randomly generated rooms where the player goes to do side quests and whatnot. It wouldn't be so bad if the entire area was optional, but you need to get to the end of mementos to actually finish the game. Also, mementos does this really cringe thing where some of the floors have modifiers, like way more enemies, or the really cringe one, plunge the level in darkness. But these modifiers are just literally nothing, because you can just walk back up the stairs you came in and then back out, and the modifiers are just gone. This part of the game is made significantly better though if you unlock Ryuji's insta-kill ability, but that just feels more like a band-aid fix rather than just making the area, you know, more enjoyable. Mementos is not that bad though, if you build like 4 requests up and then fully explore a zone while doing all these requests. There is this thing called death or something that's meant to prevent you from staying in Mementos for too long, but I did every side quest in the game and I literally saw him once. That's it. One thing I will say though that is definitely a bad quality of the game is the difficulty. This game is way too easy. P5R gives you so many tools at your disposal, yet it doesn't give the enemies any additional tools to keep the difficulty on the same level. It gets to a point where you're just steamrolling every enemy that's not a main boss, and then even the so-called strong enemies aren't really that big of a problem either. I think having things like enemies calling in for support if they're the only one left alive, or things like that could have gone a long way in adding some additional difficulty. Especially since in Akumara Palace, the biggest difficulty spike in the game, teaches you the mechanic of needing to wipe whole hordes of enemies at once in order to win, and then never uses this again until the final fight really. The Akumara Palace difficulty spike is still so bizarre to me, because I thought the game would have just been super hard from that point on, but it just wasn't. It was just a super hard fight and then straight back to normality. Speaking of being giga overpowered though, let's talk about Joker. Joker, being the poster boy and playable character, obviously has a lot more tools at his disposal compared to the rest of the gang. His main gimmick being that, unlike everyone else who's only limited to one, Joker can use any of his captured personas. This whole system has its own area, the Velvet Room, where Joker can upgrade, sell, combine, fuse, and document all of his personas, being able to make some absolutely crazy combinations. This fusing mechanic, with Joker being able to use multiple personas at once, really continues to build on that every playthrough is different ideas so well. It's one of the things that keeps the variety in the game high, as you're constantly changing out personas, while maybe having one or two you keep for a while because they're really strong. For example, in my playthrough, I used an early Kaguya Picora, and she was just insanely busted. And even though I was constantly getting new personas on my team, she did not leave my team until the very end of the game. And I'm sure so many other people have similar stories to that, but with completely different personas instead. And that's just awesome if you ask me. The reason I love this individuality in everyone's playthrough so much is because it opens the game up to so much discussion. Like, what persona did you guys use to beat this boss? Or, who did you guys romance? Or, what did you guys do with most of your free time after Palaces? Speaking of that though, let's talk about the day-to-day system in Persona 5 Royal. Very uniquely to the Persona series, this game runs off a real-time system where the entirety of the game takes place over the course of about 10 months or so. Throughout these 10 months, there are certain story missions that will need to be completed before certain dates, such as every palace giving the player roughly 2 to 3 weeks to complete, and should the player not complete it in time, you will get a game over. However, apart from these due dates, about 80% of the time you're given in a day is completely up to you to spend however you please, and P5R has an abundance of activities you can do. So much to do, in fact, that during loading screens, the game itself bangs home its most important message: take your time. This message is important as it's so easy to waste your free time doing things that just won't benefit you as much as other things would. Especially since the free time you get isn't time gated, so you have all the time in the world to explore thoroughly and decide on your best course of action before doing it. Which again, I keep bringing this up, plays into that every playthrough is unique gameplay. You really have to plan out your days sometimes though, as it's not just social links that you can do. You can play darts, make infiltration items, buy items, work part-time jobs, fish, there's really a little bit of everything. And most of these level up your social stats. These social stats act as a barrier to entry to many confidant ranks, so depending on what confidant you're trying to level up, you may need to find activities to do that are beneficial to both yourself and your social stats. One of the main reasons I had never played Persona 5 earlier was because I was scared off by this real-time system, as I thought it would be annoying and unfun to try and micromanage my time, but I just couldn't have been more wrong. If anything, the game gives you more than enough time to do what you want with it, meaning that having a bunch of dud days doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. On a bit of a negative side though, this abundance of time is really felt with the Steal the Palace treasure timeframes. Other than the very first palace, never once was I even close to reaching the set date without stealing the treasure. In fact, I don't think there was a single time where I didn't clear the entire palace within like the first 2 to 3 days. To be honest though, I think this is more of an issue with the difficulty of the game though. The main factor working towards you just staying in a palace the entire time is your SP, which can only be restored through items, with these items not really being that easy to acquire. There's not many places actually just sell them for money, but this hardly ends up mattering as many confidant abilities or even equipables just give a shit ton of free SP. The game itself knows this though, so at some points they force you out of the palace to go do something in real life, like go unlock a door in the real world so it unlocks in the palace. but this only sets you back like an extra day at most. Again, if the game itself was actually harder and forced you to use your SP a lot more during regular fights, maybe the time frames might have meant something, but oh well. But there are moments where your limited amount of time genuinely has an impact. Most afternoons, people will message you wanting to hang out. However, sometimes you get multiple people wanting to hang out with you, so you sort of have to pick and choose. This itself wouldn't affect you that much, but most people have schedules with only certain days where they will actually be available. So if you turn down someone, they might not be able to hang out until days or even weeks later. So it's moments like these where you need to truly take your time and decide on a course of action that fits best. So yeah, the day-to-day system is incredibly deep, but it's also extremely satisfying to learn, and the game is more than forgiving when it comes to spending your free time. I'm pretty sure it's even possible to max out literally every single confidant in a single playthrough if you really take your time. So the gameplay in this game is just top notch. I haven't played any of the other Persona games yet, emphasis on yet, they will all be played, don't you worry. But this really feels like the combination of everything they've learned about game design over the past decade or however long they've been making Persona games for. The combat is incredibly flashy and satisfying, with enough variety for additional gameplay factors to keep it feeling fresh over the game's entire runtime, with incredibly fleshed out slice of life gameplay that goes hand in hand in making the player, yes you, really feel like you are a phantom thief, living a double life and trying to find that work-life balance. Even if the game is maybe perhaps a little bit too generous when it comes to deadlines and free time. Also, this game has a grappling hook. Like, that's game design 101. A game is always better if it has a grappling hook. I mean, come on. Okay, we're nearing the finish line. Let's move on to... I've been playing video games for a good number of years, but I'm saying here, right now, Persona 5 Royal is the most stylistic game I have ever played. Whoa, I know, right? Crazy hot take. Whoa, I can't believe you just said that. But no, seriously, no game I have ever played even competes with Persona 5. Well, maybe Hi-Fi Rush, but still, something about Persona 5 Royal just feels so premium. I feel like everyone had the exact same reaction to opening the main menu for the first time. It's so full of swagger and style that it makes you think, why no other game even tries to make UI like this? But it's not just the UI, everything both visually and audibly is just spectacular. So let's go through each aspect of the aesthetics, one by one. We'll start with the UI, because I already talked about it a little already, but I can't get this across enough. It is so flashy, and this doesn't just apply to the menu. The battle UI is just as good, and it's not just good, it's iconic. People who have never played a single Persona game can look at any battle in P5R and instantly tell you that it's a Persona game. Same with the main menu, it is also incredibly iconic. However, this might be my only negative opinion in this section of the video, but while the UI is so amazing visually, in some aspects the visual appeal comes at the cost of readability in certain parts of the game. The main culprit of this being the inventory. It is such a slog trying to navigate through your items, both in and out of combat. So much so that I don't think I used a single item in my first 40 hours of gameplay. It's that bad. They for some reason put all the items in this insanely long list, and to actually know what each one does, you have to scroll all the way down to the item you want, press the inspect button to find out what it actually does, and sometimes the information this inspect button gives you is just straight up not helpful. This sort of extends to swapping weapons as well, as it's really just annoying trying to compare weapons and whatnot. So much so that I just didn't really engage in this mechanic either, and straight up forgot to buy gun upgrades for my first 40 hours. I'll admit though, that last bit might be on me. Moving on, P5R is beautiful. It honestly might have timeless visuals. I can see this game holding up even 10 years down the line. I have literally no clue how they're going to improve on this in an eventual Persona 6. The overworld looks good and really encapsulates Japan, but where this game truly shines is the palaces. Each of these areas are so tonally different from each other, offer completely new and exciting sets to explore, and paint absolute pictures with how beautiful some of these vistas are. There are moments in the game where Joker grappling hooks around a level, and these moments can make your mouth hit the floor, especially in the first palace, Kamoshida's, where we get to see the absolute scale of his castle, and it shows how his desire is located at the very tippity top of his palace. Obviously, we can't talk about how beautiful this game is without mentioning the 2D anime cutscenes that play throughout the game. Cause god damn, these are gorgeous. I would always get so giddy whenever the screen faded to black and one of those cutscenes would play. They are stunning, so full of character, funny, deep, a whole list of synonyms I could list. These are honestly probably my favourite part of the game. These cutscenes take what is already such an amazing cast of characters and gives them even more life. You would think with these 2D cutscenes being so amazing though, the 3D pre-rendered cutscenes would suffer, but that's just so far from the truth. These cutscenes are also so expressive and entertaining, with my favourites being all the Persona Awakening cutscenes. I feel like the 3D models are able to capture the struggle of awakening their personas so well. Absolute cinema. This entire game is just a movie with an 11 out of 10 soundtrack to go along with it. The music in this series is exceptional, so much so that it's pretty much its own genre now. People who've never played an Atlus game before listen to Persona music. Hell, people who don't even play video games listen to Persona music, and you listen to a few of these songs and you instantly know why. The P5R soundtrack does so much in making every single activity feel unique and distinct, mainly the Palace themes. Oh my god, the Palace themes. These are all such bops that somehow capture the vibe of each palace perfectly. The battle themes are also both perfect. However, for the sake of not just dick riding everything about this game in this part of the video, I think the 2 regular battle themes do start to get a little bit repetitive near the end of the game. The fact that I have to nitpick so hard to say anything badly about the music is so crazy to me. I have so many of these songs in playlists now and have extensively listened to and will continue to listen to the entire soundtrack. I've already talked at length about the characters in this game, but what I haven't mentioned yet is how incredibly strong their character designs are. Character design is an incredibly difficult thing, and the fact that Persona 5 has so many top tier designs is just unfair to other games. Like, come on man, share the love a bit, you're making other games look bad at this point. This game has Final Fantasy VII levels of character design, especially everyone's Phantom Thief attire. Holy moly, these designs are awesome, especially Makoto, Sumire, and Joker. Joker might have one of my favourite character designs of any character ever, to be honest. And I love so much how Sumire's outfit is so similar to Joker's. It's one of the reasons I love their showtimes so much. Speaking of showtimes, all of their all-out attack finishes and showtimes are so full of charm and just pure awesomeness. And I did talk about this already, but their voice actors. Jesus, this might be the best dub performance for Japanese media I've ever heard. It is a little weird that even in the dub they keep the prefixes like senpai and kun and whatnot, but that does result in some pretty funny moments, so it's all good with me. I will say though, I think a lot of the characters suffer from what I like to call the mantis problem, where from certain angles the nose doesn't really render in, and it makes their eyes look super far apart and unproportional, making them look like, well, a mantis. This sort of problem is in animes like Dr. Stone, and I think it always looks weird, but this might just be a stylistic choice that I'm not a fan of. Also, due to the sheer amount of costumes everyone has, there is quite a lot of clipping on the meshes. This is a massive pet peeve of mine, but I know how hard it is to make meshes not clip. But the clipping came up often enough for me to constantly notice it in almost every single play session. But I'm more than happy to take that trade if it means we get the sheer amount of costumes we got for everyone. Everyone's casual clothes as well reflect their personalities so well. They all feel like that's what they would genuinely wear and they never felt out of place. I don't really have much more to say about the aesthetics of the game. It's the shortest bit of the video purely because there really isn't as much to talk about. This game looks amazing, sounds amazing, just all around one of the most stylistic games ever. Like, what else is there for me to talk about? Before we move into my closing thoughts, I wanted to talk about a few more miscellaneous things that either didn't fit into any of the previous segments or I just straight up forgot to talk about. This segment might be a little bit scattershot and all over the place, so I'll try and get through everything quickly. Firstly, I wanted to quickly mention the Thieves Guild. This is more Royal exclusive content and pretty much acts as an extra segment in the game, letting you unlock things like concept art and music tracks. I think, anyway. I only went there once in my playthrough, had a quick sticky beak around and just left. I'm pretty sure there's like a whole card game there as well, but this whole extra stuff isn't really my jam. Not to say anything in this room is bad at all, but the core gameplay and story is so incredibly strong, I just never really found myself wanting to spend time doing anything else in the game other than that. Another part of the game I completely missed was the battle challenges. So basically, in the Velvet Room, the twins can offer you battle challenges that involve things like having to defeat a certain amount of enemies or deal a certain amount of damage. At least, that's what I think they involve, because I didn't do them either. This wasn't because I wasn't really interested, but more so just that I didn't know it existed until like 70 hours in. Since this game has so many different things you can do, it was bound to be that my small brain would have missed something, and the challenges sadly had to take that spot. Also, I did look to see what the end reward was. It's to see if it was, worth doing, and you do get to fight the other protagonists in the Persona series, but since I haven't played those games yet, and I was so close to the end of the game, yeah, I'm sure they're hella fun though. I think I mentioned this briefly a few times already, but this game is funny. There were a shocking amount of times where I was laughing out loud, which is quite rare for me. A lot of the humor is really good in both written jokes and slapstick. It sort of does have some of the bones of generic Japanese anime humor, where something super quirky happens and nobody gives it any mind except one character, but none of the jokes really feel like they overstay their welcome or sacrifice other aspects of the game in order to randomly fit in comedy. I talked about how easy the game was in terms of combat, but honestly, this game is a little bit too easy in almost every aspect. I sort of get why, as Persona 5 Royal seems like it was really intended to be an entry point for new players, but I wish they still gave us an option to make it harder. Palace completion timeframes are way too generous, the amount of money you get is too forgiving, mid to late game enemies don't pose enough of a threat, the so-called merciless difficulty is somehow easier than the previous one. Just a lot of little things that don't really subtract from the overall enjoyment of the game, but things where it would have been nice to have the option to change, which is weird the game doesn't have because A, P5R has so many quality of life options already, and B, I'm fairly certain Persona 4 Golden lets you edit the difficulty of certain aspects of the game, so you can just tailor it to your liking. I really wish Joker was just his own character, instead of just being sort of a blank slate for the player to control. That somewhat quiet kid that becomes a cocky leader would have been so much more entertaining to watch, because even as he is now, you can still see this personality start coming through. Also, Joker's voice actor is amazing, and the fact that he has so much dialogue in this game, but none of it is voiced, is really disappointing. I get why he isn't his own character, so people can roleplay and choose their own dialogue options, leaning into, that unique playthrough stuff, but still, whenever I play games, I always try and make choices that I think the character themselves would make. So having Joker not really be a character didn't let me do that. Joker being this shell for the player to operate is probably one of the reasons I didn't super love the romance either, since it feels like the girls fall in love with Joker just because he's the main character, rather than, actually falling in love with him. Okay, super quick rapid fire before we start closing up. I wish there was a map that showed you where every person hung out. More gun customization stuff would have been cool. I want more minigames like billiards and praying stuff and other things like that. Would have been nice if all the fusing stuff in the Velvet Room was just a little bit clearer. DLC stuff they give you is way too strong. They even need to put it in a different area of the game, or at least give you a warning before claiming it, because it trivializes early game. Even if you don't use the stuff, you still get 100,000 yen that you can't get rid of. Fusion alarms were pretty cool, but they were way too common and too strong to the point where I almost never fused stuff late game unless there was an alarm happening. I wish there were more showtimes as well as all-out attack finish screens. Would have been cool if these things unlocked after you maxed out someone's confidant or something. I wish the darts game had a little bit more variety, especially since it's so important to do, you have to play it a few times. Josei, the dude in Mementos, he's just sort of there. I kinda wanted more out of him. Asking Shadows for treasure or gold was 95% of the time never to play, you'd just be better off recruiting them or killing them. Disaster enemies were incredibly satisfying to kill, and these never got old. Technical attacks could have been a little bit more clearer in what they would actually do, like would they actually knock them down or would they just do more damage? Would have been nice if there was more of a reason to do well in your schoolwork / exams, other than, just getting that little knowledge boost. This is a pretty big part of gameplay, so I feel like this might be my biggest nitpick in this section. Part-time jobs are almost never worth it. Only real useful to unlock Mementos requests and starting confidants, but after that, I pretty much never went to work. Why did the game make me get rid of Arsene, bro? He was so cool, and they forced me to fuse him with some pumpkin dude. Why did they do that, man? Being able to customize our room with stuff Joker gets on his travels would have been pretty cool. Persona 5 Royal is nothing short of amazing. It is a game that is unique to each and every player, and one where you can see and appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears, and hours of work it took to create. In its 100-hour journey, P5R fires off in all cylinders, with absolutely stunning visuals, stylistic character designs, music that makes you stop what you're doing to listen, and a story that is surprisingly mature, deep, funny, and inspiring. Pair this with a set of characters that bounce off of each other so well it makes you forget you're playing a game and are instead just talking with friends you feel like you've known forever. This is not to mention what a masterful re-release this is, adding many quality of life features that are hard to believe weren't in the vanilla version, along with a final story beat that is many people's, including myself, favourite section in not just this game, but any game ever. Mostly thanks to an absolutely genius villain that makes the player question their own morals. This is not to say the game is without flaws, because it isn't. A lot of jank and little pet peeves rear their ugly head in the most peculiar places throughout the game, and not to mention the story beat that is leagues below the rest of the game in quality. It has you wondering if you're still even playing the same game. But what game doesn't have problems? No game is perfect, and Persona 5 Royal is no exception. But unlike many other games, P5R has such a strong sense of identity, and knows exactly what story it wants to tell, and knows exactly what kind of gameplay it wants to present. And it achieves these aspects with flying colours. Not to mention, during a special, you can pick up this game for like $30, which is an absolutely insane deal. Persona 5 Royal is a game everyone should play, and one that I will continue to recommend to people for some time to come, and I look forward into delving into the rest of Atlus's catalogue, as the studio has gained my trust with just one game, and I truly believe the others will live up to my expectations. That is the confidence I have in this company after playing only one of their games. I've been Big Leaflet, and this was Persona 5 Royal, a review. What are you still doing here? Video's over. Oh, you staying here for little old me, are you? Oh, you're too kind. But no, seriously, if you watch this entire video through, thank you so much. This took a long time to make, having to play through a 100-hour game, write a 20,000 word script, and then editing the entire thing has been a monstrous undertaking. But if you're still watching this, you must have enjoyed the video, right? Hopefully. So, if you could like or subscribe or honestly, just recommend this video to some friends you think might enjoy it. Please, I would truly appreciate it. Okay? Cool beans. And as a reward for staying so long, I'll give you a little hint towards the next game I'll be reviewing. Thank you again for watching.